Hello, and welcome to the Twisted Pair. It's supposed to be a pair, but it's just me today. Um, Ashred is not going to be with us tonight, and she sends her well wishes to everybody, but she has got some really good things going on right now today that, well, we're praying that they're going on good today, but we'll let her tell that. That's her story. So, whereas last week we had told everybody that we were going to do a pairing of a challenge that we got from Albert of a chicken fajitas and the unfinished business by Rojas and Tito's vodka, that is put on pause. And the reason why we're putting that on pause is because I really don't want to do a food pairing by myself. So there you have it. So what am I going to do today? Well, I'm going to do a pairing review with you guys right here. Now, if you have seen the post and have seen my Instagram, then you will know what I'm pairing. And I hope everybody comes with a pairing as well. But I am going to be pairing this cold cut by Fused Spirits. So this is a cold cut bourbon whiskey with a cold brew coffee. And we're going to talk about, through this, how to pair with a finished whiskey. And what that finished whiskey is that essentially, you know what that is. You know, finished whiskey is where they'll take it and finish it in a barrel, such as a rum barrel, such as a port cask, such as a Scotch barrel, and you've probably seen different ones. I mean, Angel's Envy is probably the most well known for that, but that's what we're going to be doing. The cigar I am pairing is K by Karen Burgers, her Cameroon. But before we get into it, a little bit of a story about what Fused Spirits is. So they are a craft distillery out of Chicago, and it is owned by, or it's owned, was created and owned, and the master distiller, his name is Paul, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce his name, but you'll be able to see it here in just a second. So I want to share this with everybody real quick here.
Prior to World War II, my grandfather's family owned a brewery that was confiscated in the war. After the war, my grandfather spent the rest of his life trying to get the brewery back, unsuccessfully. I started Fused Spirits in order to bring back this family legacy and to honor my grandfather's memory.
I thought that was such a great story, you know, to where Paul created Fused Spirits to honor his family's legacy. Where, as you heard, they had created a brewery and was taken over and shut down after after World War II, and many years later, he's created Fused Spirits. Now, this one that we're drinking on tonight has gotten some pretty good acclimates. But what it is it's a bourbon that after they finished aging it, and there's no aging statement on it, and this is one of the things that I've heard a lot of people say, that bourbon requires an aging statement, and that is wrong. Bourbon must be aged a minimum of 2 years, and that is wrong. Bourbon must be aged a minimum of 4 years. Well, that is also wrong. There's other stipulations around that on what the time frame is on it. So it also, there's people that will say that bourbon must be aged in a new charred oak barrel, which is also wrong. So let's just quickly go over each of these. What has to take place is that it has to be in a new charred oak container. If it's classified as a straight bourbon, then it's a minimum of 2 years, and the age statement must be on the bottle if it's under 4 years. If it's a bottled and bond, then it's a minimum of 4 years, 100 proof, and mash distilled and aged at a certified distillery with Rickhouse. There's your statements. So technically, we could say that a spirit is a bourbon as long as it meets the mash bill, 51% or more of corn, and the remaining could be 2, could be 3, could be 4 grains, or all cereal grains. Goes into a new charred oak container. That can be American oak, it can be French oak, but it's just got to be unused charred oak container, not a barrel. So that container can be literally a new charred oak bucket, as long as never had anything else in it, and carried over to from the still over to the bottles and poured into a bottle. And that is 100% absolutely legal. So new charred oak container. So there is no age statement on it. Now, what creates this as a finished, and you'll see that this says cold cut, this is a bourbon whiskey. This is what they've done with this is that after it aged, and I'm going to say based upon the color here that this is probably about between 18 months and 36 months. I'm gonna guess. I mean, I don't know for sure. There's no age statement that I've seen on the barrel, on the bottle anywhere. But what they did is that after it was in the barrel, then it went into a emptied barrel that had cold brew coffee in it. So that's how finishing works. So say if we were going to finish this with port or a rum, then after it's aged for a period of time in that barrel, then the spirit goes into a barrel that's not brand new, that is then put into that had some other spirit or something like that in it. And it was a could be a rum, it could be a scotch, like what we talked about, or in this case it's cold coffee. So Facebook user, I don't know, can't see your name there, buddy, but I like what you said here. From their website, it says Few Spirits is a grain-to-glass producer of American gins and whiskeys. First distillery in Evanston, Illinois, which is near Chicago since Prohibition. And the name coincidentally matches the initials of Frances Elizabeth Willard, a local woman who was a key figure in the temperance movement. Yep. And that's what I also like about it. So a grain to glass means that they have part in the grain, in the growing the grain, participating in the grain, all the way from it is to where it goes into the glass itself. And so with that being, now I'm curious as if all of that is in Evanston, Illinois. I don't know. I haven't talked with Paul on that one. But the one time I did talk with Paul, we talked a little bit about this spirit. And this is one of my favorite. In fact, you can see I'm getting close to a bottle kill on this. And through getting close, hey Joey G, thank you, brother. Through getting closer to a bottle kill on this, this is going to be like my third one that I've killed. And Joey, I believe this distillery is out in somewhere around you. I mean, it's near Chicago, and I know you're Chicago. Anyway, so let's get into this. Let's see. I love the color. We got a nice, medium amber. I got some good light coming through it, and you typically want to look at that through a white, and so I'm seeing the white, the background of my laptop here. But I've got a nice medium amber, and that's what's kind of telling me that I'm thinking that this is probably, in that year and a half, 2 year, 3.5 year age statement on it. Nose is what I would expect with it. Was I'm getting a little bit of honey right at the front, a little bit of vanilla, a tiny bit of caramel, and I expect to get that from a bourbon. And I'm getting a little bit of cocoa, a little bit of cocoa on here, and or that could be coffee as well. It's a little bit of a bitter note, and I usually equate that to cocoa, but that could also be coffee. Now let's see what we're getting on this on the palate here. A little bit of woodsy. I would not really oaky. I would almost call it cedar. A little bit of cedar with tiny bit of cinnamon. But I can definitely, there's just a subtle, subtle, subtle hint of coffee at the very back end, which is nice. Kind of rounds it out. It's really it's a bold drink. I mean, it's got a bold sip to it. Not in your face bold, as in like a really nice, peppery rye or a bold peaty scotch. It's got a nice bold, well-rounded, where there's a little bit of sweetness from it. There's that little bit of the coffee. Definitely get picking up a tiny bit of rye, and the peppery at the back end. Says that we're at 93 proof, so this is a low proof. And yes, I have to check back on the proof on it, even though I've killed 3 bottles of this. Like I said, this is one of my favorite other expressions, and I've had their straight bourbon, their straight rye. Also have had. I have not had their bottled in bond. I believe their bottled in bond is a little bit newer. Uh, So, Facebook user, I wish I could see y'all's names on this. But no, this is not sweet like Devil's River is. Uh, it doesn't have that strong in your face vanilla, sweet caramel opening up on the palate. There is a little bit of sweetness to it, but that little bit of sweetness immediately is overtaken. Hi, Ernest. It is immediately overtaken by that woodsy notes that I was talking about. So a bit of the a little bit of that cedar, cinnamon with a little bit of oak. Um, Joey, you can share that off of the Leaf and Grain page. It may not be on my. I'm sharing this to my public profile as opposed to LinkedIn, and so that's probably why I'm not able to see people's names. And there may not be a share there, but you can share that off of the Leaf and Grain page. Um, and Ernest, we've had this at Bottle Night before. I've brought this one to bottle night. In fact, we killed a bottle up there on bottle night at the underground. So as I was saying on this, let me revisit. Yeah, it's definitely, and it's weird. I don't know why I'm going to cedar on this, other than there's just a subtle sweetness, but it's definitely a woodsy type note for me on this. Maybe it's a combination of the cinnamon and the citrus that is hitting me on this. Um, that could be it. Is because with cinnamon is a it's your cooking spice. It's a little bit of sweetness to it, but there's also a little bit of woodsy wood type note with it. Because if you ever seen the cedar itself, I'm sorry, cinnamon itself, before it's crushed up, before it's cut down into cinnamon sticks, that it's almost looks like a bark inside, that you would see inside of a say like a cedar tree or something like that. But that's just what it looks like. Now, that being said, that could be why my mind is being drawn. Because if you remember back in what we've talked about in other episodes, uh, the way that we come about growing your palate, growing your notes, understanding flavors, is through memory. Is through a psychological aspect where other people, they'll go through the sciences and talk about how certain areas, and we've talked about certain areas of your tongue, certain areas of your palate pick up certain types of notes depending upon where you're tasting them. I like to, and Red likes to go to your memory and think about what it reminds you of. What type of meal, what type of event, experience that you've had in your life. Um, those really resonate with me more so. And then, and once again, I don't have my pairing wheel, but those resonate with me more so with how I'm able to draw into the certain major categories, and then from there, a little bit deeper from there, I'm able to refine it. Say like where I may be picking up, earthy notes, and then refine that into, maybe a type of grass or type of hay or what have you, or woodsy notes, and then refine that down into, say, hickory or mesquite or maple or oak or cedar. Not that I've ever tasted cedar, but it's what reminds me of. So that's what I'm getting on that. All right. So now I've got a base understanding of this, of the distillate, of the bourbon or the whiskey. So I'm going to cleanse my palate, and we're going to go over to the cigar. And so I've got the K by Karen, the Cameroon, which I've had this cigar many times. I've never paired these together, so I was toying back and forth between going with a Cameroon or going with a San Andres. San Andres, I was thinking about possibly going with because, the chocolatey notes that we pick up in the San Andres, and thinking that that would pair well with the coffee. But I'm going with the Cameroon partially for that reason, although it's not as profound as it is in a San Andres. But the Cameroon's got some really nice earthy notes to it, but it also has some of those earthy notes tend to go towards the coffee type grain. So that's why I went with the Cameroon. So would love to know if you guys are pairing anything tonight. What are you drinking? What are you smoking? Let me know. I love this lighter. That was sarcasm. This is Dominican um, Dominican fillers and binders on this one. And most of Karen's is going to be Dominican fillers and binders, if I remember right. Now the 25th anniversary is different. It's got a Sumatra binder and a San Andres wrapper. But I do have the 25th anniversary, but I'm saving that one for a review to post on the website. Now, if you'll notice when I lit it, and it took me a little bit longer, but I didn't hot light it. In other words, I didn't take it and light it and draw in. And the reason why I didn't do that is because I don't want to take and draw that flame into those oils and char those oils and pick up char for a while. Oh, nice. Well, I kind of figured you'd had some famous grouse there, Ernest, and Whiskey Rebellion from Romacraft, part of the Intemperance line. Very, very good. That is a nice pairing. Yes, Joe. The Don Kiki Gold is stellar, and I like the silver too. Karen has just got some really good cigars, and if you guys haven't checked out Karen cigars, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Let me. There we go. So now when you're going to take the notes on your cigar, you're going to want to really remove any distractions that you have that you've got. Because if we don't remove those distractions, then a lot of times what we're going to get is just a smoke. It's just going to get the tobacco and the leather. Okay, so you heard me saying early on that I was picking up caramel and vanilla. And I really hope I'm picking up caramel and vanilla on a bourbon, because if I'm not, then chances are it's probably not a bourbon and maybe more along the lines of a Scotch or an Irish. And the reason why is because through the aging, the charring of the barrel, that's where we get our caramel, and the oak departs the vanilla flavorings on this. Well, just equally with that on a cigar, I'm most likely going to pick up tobacco. I mean, it'd be kind of weird if I'm not picking up any tobacco flavors, but it'd also be kind of strange if I'm not picking up any leather notes, because we usually equate those initial earthy notes that's from the saco of the leaf. So let's take another step back here, okay? So remember in some of our talkings that in the tobacco plant that you've got really three major primings in the plant, with the top one being the Ligero. That's the top leaf of it. It gets the most sunlight. It gets the most nutrients, because the nutrients goes up the stalk, up to the top. Gets the most sunlight, so it's a lot of nutrients on it, and therefore, it's a much more flavorful, intensity. And a lot of people will equate some of the pepperiness to the Ligero. The second level is your Viso, and so the Viso is the middle leaves, in the plant. So we got the Seco and then the Viso. And the Visos, lots of really good flavors in there. That's where you're going to really pick up some of the flavors that aren't your peppery flavors. Because it's still picking up a lot of nutrients, but it doesn't have the sun just beating down on it because that has been protected by the Ligeros. And then the bottom ones is the Secos, which is gets very little sun, gets a lot of the water because it's closer to the ground, and it's also going to pick up a lot of those earthy type notes to it. The Secos and Visos are going to be your better leaves for the combustion rates. For burning, because it's a little bit thinner. The leaves aren't as thick because it's not getting as much sun. But when we're picking up those earthy notes from it, we're getting that from the Secos, generally. And we typically equate that to leather as well. So yeah, I'm definitely picking up that black coffee note. Which I was expecting to pick it up in that. Now, if you notice, I said black coffee, and not not like a cream coffee or this is that black coffee, where it's got a little bit of that bitterness, but you still have that richness in there. Now, I typically like to get, you see, I've got a nice, good ash starting to come on here. I'm probably about about 3/8 to a half inch in. I like to get about an inch to an inch and a half into my cigar before I start the pairing of the two. That way I know that I've got past any of the charring that may be in the cigar. Depending upon how I've lit it, I'm getting into that first third of the cigar. So, and especially in boutiques such as this one here, our cigars, we've kind of divided into thirds here. And so I want to get well into this first third before I do go into pair, and then I'm going to comment upon how the pairing is going from the cigar to the drink, and then the drink to the cigar. And the reason why we do that is so we can see how one is going to impact the other. How is my cigar going to impact the notes of the drink, and vice versa? How are the notes of the drink going to impact the notes on the cigar? And if you saw my Instagram, I had stated how cigar pairing is more than just the body, saying, okay, I'm going to get a full-bodied cigar and match that with a full-bodied wine or a full-bodied drink. The full body really is defined differently from cigars to wines and spirits. From the wines and the spirits, a full body is going to be the overall roundness of that drink. The overall roundness. How bold is it? How strong are those tannins coming through? A full body spirit is going to be how again, how well rounded is all of the flavors, but how predominant is that, or how in your face, how bold is that predominant flavor of a spirit. And so, say in a bourbon, so let's just say a standard bourbon, not a high rye, so that the rye is really 25% or lower. So we've got a bit more of the wheat in there as well. I mean, not the wheat, but the barley in there as well. But we've got a higher corn. So how strong is those predominant flavors, such as the honey, the sweetness that comes from that corn, or the spicy pepper. If I'm running a little bit higher rye, if I'm running a little bit higher with my malted barley, how strong are those cocoa notes, those chocolate notes, those bit in the drink? The more predominant that, or the more in your face, and that predominant note is, the more of a full body it is on that. With wines, the more those tannins are there, present, predominant, then that tends to lead to a more of a fuller body. And we can have lighter and medium body in both of those. Well, when we're talking about cigars, body relates to the smoke. How heavy does that smoke feel on your palate? How heavy does it feel on your tongue? Does it feel like it's a light smoke that you really have to drill in and focus to get the flavors on it? Or can you really feel it in your palate, in the cavity of your mouth? How much smoke is it? Is it a cigar that is producing a lot of smoke? And remember that a draw on a cigar can have a good draw and can have a good burn, but not produce a great deal of smoke. So the body on a cigar has to do with how much and how heavy that smoke feels. Now, granted, the heavier the smoke feels on your palate, and that you start focusing in on that as you're taking your draws on your cigar. Hold the smoke in. And how does it feel? Can you sense its density in your palate and on your tongue and on your cavity? Can you feel all that? That's going to give you an indication of a fuller body or a lighter body cigar, not how much pepper there is. Because you can have a full body cigar, say an Ecuadorian. An Ecuadorian Habano, an Ecuadorian Sumatra, which is not really going to be peppery at all unless it's got a lot of, Ligeros, from Esteli or Condego in Nicaragua. But you can have a full body cigar that's not peppery, but those flavors are really prominent because of how much smoke that there is. The more that you have to drill in to be able to distinguish the different flavors, really a lot of that comes into the lower intensity of flavors is related to the body of the smoke. So that's why we'll say that is that a light body, medium body, full body. Strength of the cigar is also oftentimes equated with the spice, and the strength of the cigar has nothing to do with the spice. The strength of the cigar has to do with how young that tobacco is and how long that tobacco has fermented to reduce the ammonia levels and to reduce the acidity levels. So just let's take this back to the wine again. When we're talking about red wine, a full body cab that is younger is going to a full body cab that is younger is going to have really high tannins on it. And so and that's what dries your mouth out. That's what gives you that bitter kind of note on it and dries your mouth out. It's also could be what gives you a headache if you are that's what can give you a headache if you if you drink a younger red. And so I tell a lot of people that if you can't drink reds because they give you a headache, try a younger, a more matured wine, that has a little bit more age to it. But anyways, as your wine rests, ages more, because wine will continue aging in the bottle, those tannins will go down, same as your cigar. That's why we'll say, I'm going to let you'll hear me say and others say that you let your cigars rest in your humidor a little bit, let them age a little bit longer, and they'll continue aging just like your wine does. And that strength is what we call the strength is going to go down. And we'll say it's much smoother. That's because those acidity levels and the ammonia levels have come down. All right, so the smoke input distinguishes the body. Yes, how much smoke there is what distinguishes the body. And we separate each of these classifications when we're talking about describing a cigar, but we don't pick up a cigar because of the amount of smoke. We don't pick up a cigar because of how much acidity levels or how much nicotine levels on it. We smoke a cigar because it's got that right amount of smoke that we enjoy, we could feel it, and it has the right flavors. I mean, we typically come back to a cigar because it has particular, even if you can't distinguish the flavors, even if you don't have the ability, your palate is not matured enough or trained enough to be able to come back and say, okay, I'm definitely picking up some cocoa in there, and I'm picking up a little bit of fruity notes in there, a little bit of tropical fruit. If you can't pick up that, there's something about that cigar that's drawing you back to it, and it's typically the flavor of it. You really enjoyed it. So that flavor and to be able to how strong that flavor is or how intense that flavor is what I like to say, is going to be a combination of the smoke, the body, the strength, the lower the acids that's in it, and the ammonia that's in it. So more mature tobacco, and then what those notes are is going to come into the region and the type of seeds, the type of wrapper, binder, fillers, and so forth. Great questions. I appreciate the questions. Ernest, yes, I believe you had a 262 that night that we had the the cold cut from Few Spirits. And if you have not had Karen Berger's Cameroon, I highly recommend it. This bottle here, this is what I'm drinking tonight. You can pick this up for sub $50 at at your local favorite. So I pick it up at Total Wine, which is just down the street from me here. And as soon as I kill this bottle, I'm going to be getting another one on it. So the next thing I want to do through this, in the pairing, and please let me know if you guys have any more questions, as we're going through this, is the next thing that I want to do with this is I'm going to take a draw off of the cigar, and then I'm going to take a sip off of the spirit. I have not had the breakfast gin, but I've heard good things about it. I need to add that to my collection. Mm. Okay, that's interesting. That's really interesting. So the cigar, and I'm going to have to revisit this, but right now I just want to state that the cigar for me, it toned down that it toned down that cedar woodsy note that I was getting from it. So now the sweetness is coming forward, and it's more of a stone fruit, kind of more apricot. No, more peach, really. Let me see again. Yeah, that's definitely peach. So definitely more peach, which is really nice because now it's allowing other notes from the whiskey to really start coming forward. With the gin, I would, okay, so question is with the gin, would I go with the lighter cigars, say a San Andres or a Connecticut? I definitely would not go with the San Andres. San Andres, that chocolate is just going to really overpower those floral and herbaceous notes of a gin. Even if it's a London or American dry, it's just going to overpower those herbaceous and floral notes. I would go with a lighter. I would go with a cigar that tends to be more towards a your earthy notes, your grassier notes, your floral notes, or herbaceous notes. And so I would probably go with a Dominican or a Cuban or Ecuadorian. Connecticut broadleaf would be a good one. With that, Sumatra would be good. Um, the Cameroon might not be too bad, but you're gonna want to know who's made that Cameroon and whether or not it's a Nicaraguan or it's a Dominican or a Honduran or so. Gin equals a Bandolero or a warped Mistio Tempio. That would be interesting. That would definitely be interesting on this one. Mm. This I am enjoying this. This is nice. Okay, so Peruvian and Brazilian type tobaccos pair better with gin, but it's probably the most challenging pairing in my opinion. So, Facebook user, let me know who is saying this. Uh, but I would have to Peruvian. Yes, I'm really intrigued on that one. And honestly, David Skelton and I did recently a Panamanian Puro. Hey, Chris. Panamanian Puro that paired really good with the desert golden sotal. So I think that would go really good with the gin as well. The Brazilian, I would have to go with the Matafina on a Brazilian. I think the boldness of the Matafina, bringing out some of those black fruit notes would be really good. Uh, Definitely challenging. Gin is hard to challenge. Is harder to pair with because of the complexity of the notes on that, especially if you're going with a floral gin. So you got to think about it. So gin starts off with Jupiter or juniper berries on that, but they can add other types of uh, florals and herbaceous such as sungrass and lemon and lavender and the list goes on. And I've had some floral gins that had 16 different uh, herbs that was part of the distillant. And I mean, it was a beautiful gin. But can you imagine trying to pair that up? I mean, it really kind of takes it to where that is the more complex of the two as opposed to the cigar. So I'm kind of wondering how that would go. I mean, what kind of pairing that would be. I think it would be a good one. I'm gonna have to explore the pairings on that one. Uh, and I'm gonna do the smoked on this before I switch and cleanse my palate and go drink to cigar. Oh yeah, yeah. That was good. You guys got to get this and try this. I'm going to give the challenge to you guys, Joe, Chris, Ernest, anybody else that's watching. Let me know if you want to step up to the challenge. And you step up to the challenge, I'll do this. If you want to do the challenge, we'll do a different type of a night. Not a twisted pair, but we'll go live and do this pairing all together, and we'll do it on a Zoom and get everybody in on this. And let me know if that's something that you want to do. All right, so it goes back to the origins of pairings. Coffee and tobacco were grown very closely. There is zero tobacco grown near juniper berries. Most gins originated from areas well away from tobacco grown areas. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're absolutely right. And even in going in through my sommelier courses, where we had the pairing modules, they all stated that the very first pairing to do is to go with coffee, and then of course with them all being all of the instructors being from the DR or from Nicaragua or what have you, they all went with rum and then whiskey next. Chris, I know your challenge is getting off work before 7. We if we do this, which it looks like there's interest in this, um, we can schedule it later, after 7, and do it on a different night, maybe a weekend night. Uh, that way, more people would be able to attend. But I think that would be fun to where we actually do a live pairing to where, everybody's on a Zoom call, everybody's taking part of it, and we're talking through this. And this would be something that Red and or I, walk you guys through. Yeah, Sunday would be good too. All right. So as you can see, I need more. Never hurts to need more whiskey, huh? All right. So again, very important thing to do. Very, very important thing to do when you're doing pairings on this and you're really wanting to pay attention to the notes and how one impacts the other is to cleanse your palate between. Water is a good palate cleanser. Ginger ale is a good palate cleanser. Eating ginger straight is good. Star fruit, crackers, anything that's going to just take the, I hate to say residue, but I can't think of another word right now, of those flavors off of your palate, so that way you're starting off with a fresh one. Okay. Yes, I do just want to kill the bottle. Have you seen my post? I'm on a bottle kill kick, really for two reasons. One is because I need to make more room, and two, to reduce the number of bottles that I have to move when I move in September. So I may be at some point in time having a bottle kill night up here and inviting some people. So Joe, if you want to come down to the Dallas area, let me know and we'll plan it. A lot of people wonder, and I've gotten a number of questions on this, is why we swirl. Why do we swirl our whiskey and our Glen? And you'll see us if you ever watch, like you saw me at the start of this, and if you ever go to a tasting event, um, you'll see where people will hold this up to light, hold it up to a neutral background, white background, to look at the color. But we're not just looking at the color. We're looking at the legs of it. And so I'm not sure if you can see the legs in here, but the legs is what we call the whiskey running down the glass. And there's a reasoning why. So yes, um, Chris, or well, one of you guys said wake up that whiskey. Yes, it helps open it up, aerating, just like with your wines. You want to aerate it. So what do the what do the legs indicate to us? Who knows what the legs indicate to us? Somebody? Hope you guys are typing before my cigar goes out. Legs is viscosity. Okay. The longer the legs, the better the whiskey. Nah. I've had some whiskey with some shorter legs that was still good. Viscosity, is viscosity. Um, Close. Sugars. There you go. Yes. Who said that? Who said sugar? So the legs is uh, it indicates the sugars, and also it can indicate a couple of other things. Can indicate viscosity. Viscosity is usually equated to the oily feel on that. Thank you, Chris. Um, Viscosity is usually equated to the oils. Okay, this bourbon doesn't have a lot of viscosity to it. It's very light on the tongue. It's nice. It's kind of refreshing in that sense of it. This bourbon, and usually you don't find lower proof, and definitely not younger bourbons. You usually don't find lower proof and younger bourbons that have a lot of viscosity. And that viscosity is the heaviness, that weightiness, those oily sensations that you feel on this, which we can get into that in just a minute. But I'm dying to try this way. So okay, so that cedar note is back. Nope, I gotta relight this and do this again. I was talking too much. Imagine that. Love it when a lighter goes out mid-show. You'll notice I'm cleansing the palate again because I had to get my cigar relit. And this is a process, guys. I mean, this is a process. This is not something that you. This is not something that you can sit down and do in in 20, 30, or I mean in 30, 45 minutes, in the length of the time of a cigar. Expect to relight your cigar a number of times. Hmm. So now going from the drink to the cigar, those coffee notes are just upfront, upfront. Um, Wow. Okay, so Joe G says slower legs usually generally indicates more viscosity or thicker on the tongue. So I will say yes and. Yes, and the reason for that is because it's heavier sugars on it. And those heavier sugars is going to weigh heavier on the tongue. Uh, does not necessarily mean that the oils are there. Because you can have long legs, slower legs meaning that the legs are running down the glass slower. Uh, you can have slower legs, but not have those oils there, and that usually comes down into the. Now I'm trying to remember back. Um, Comes down into whether or not it's a not the mash. There's the process of cold versus hot, but I can't remember exactly what it was, so I need to go back through my material to remember back. But longer legs usually indicates that it's a hotter distillant rather than a cool distillant. But I can't remember what. So I'll get back to that, and I'll get back with you guys on that if you're interested on that. But back to the pairing here. Okay, yeah, that is just absolutely. I mean, and you're right. It's mind blowing. So it's absolutely mind blowing how the pairing flavors change when we switch from cigar to drink, and to drink to cigar. And that's exactly what got me into this and why I started pursuing this because I saw that there was something there. Because going from drink to cigar, so I take a drink and then I take a draw off the cigar. Those coffee notes are just coming out and they're just there. I mean, and they're, I mean, it's well rounded. It's not bitter like black, like just a straight, strong black espresso. But it's up front and very much so black coffee, not a creamed coffee. Um, wow, this is good. There's a particular note I can't quite pick up on. It's at the very back end of it. I may kill this bottle tonight. I don't know. It's still got quite a bit in there. Hmm. Okay, now that's curious. There's a little bit of sweetness on the back end, and on the retro started out pepper, and then it's moved out to more of a cocoa coffee, and then at the very, very, very back of the retro tail on it was that stone fruit note again. So that peach. And the reason why I'm coming to peach is because it reminds me of when my mother would make peach cobbler. Okay, and so when you bite into that peach cobbler, and you get a little bit of tart at front, but at the very end of that first bite is that really sweet, peachy stone fruit note. Okay, Ernest, let's do that. Let's plan that sometime. Ernest says I'd love to sit with you and pair a quad venti soy latte. So yeah, let's do that. So really, this is what it comes down into pairing. Now, I've only gotten through the first third. Okay, so we're here. Let's say, let's just say we're 50 minutes into it. We're about 50 minutes into this, and I'm not even. I mean, I'm just now starting into the second third. So when we're doing a pairing, because of how the notes change through the cigars, especially in boutiques, we would get through the first third and then rinse and repeat. Go to the second third, rinse, repeat. Final third, rinse and repeat. And so we would be cleansing our palate each time. So you can imagine as I'm going through a true pairing, and I'm writing an article up on this, which I'm going to have to go and get another one of these cigars, and if I kill this bottle, some more, so that that way I can do a true justice on a full pairing on it and write that up. Probably for next month's, not May issue, but for June's issue of the Whiskey Network magazine, Joe. Joe asks, "Am I getting any graham cracker notes on the pairing? Common notes on carrying cigars." So I agree with you. The graham cracker notes is very much common, and that's also common in Dominican cigars. Honestly, no, I'm not. I'm not getting really any. Now I was through the pairing. No, through the cigar. I was at first, because if you remember right, I said I was getting a little bit of that earthy and a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of honey notes on it, and that is common in Dominican cigars. A common note, just like with Ecuadorian cigars, a common note that you will get is going to be your tropical fruit. With your Nicaraguan Esteli Condego, Ometepe, you're going to get commonly your peppery notes. Your Jalapa and Honduras, you're going to commonly get a bit more creamy type notes. Yes, it is common on her Nicaraguan tobaccos, but that's because she's still using Dominicans in them. She does not have a Puro. So far as I've seen, and from talking with Karen, she does not have Puro. A Puro cigar. And so remember, a Puro cigar is going to be a cigar that where all of the tobacco, wrapper, binder, filler is all from that region. So if we say that it's a Nicaraguan Puro, then it's all from Nicaragua. Now, keep in mind that Nicaragua is a huge region, and there's four to five, even more, but four main regions within Nicaragua. You've got Esteli, the most well-known, with Condego, which is really within, an hour driving distance away. And both of those are volcanic regions. You have Ometepe, which if you're looking at a map of Nicaragua and you see the lake in the center and there's an island, that's Ometepe. And that island is a volcano. So that's very much, even more so, volcanic region. And so from the volcanic, because of that, all the soils got a lot of phosphorus, potassium in them. Now you move up into Jalapa, so further north, which is actually in a valley inside the mountains that is at a lower elevation than than the others, even a lower elevation than Ometepe, and that's Jalapa. And so because it's really more of a rainforest type region, and because of all the magnesium notes in it, which I didn't notice until talking to Luciano, that really is indicative of all those creamy type notes that we get. Well, Jalapa and Honduras are right next door to each other. And so that's why with Honduras we get a lot of creamy notes on it. That's why with a Honduras Habano and a Nicaraguan Habano, which is typically up north in the Jalapa Valley area, we get a lot more creamy notes as opposed to a Habano wrapper in Ecuador, where we get a lot more of the tropical fruit notes. Well, we get the tropical fruit notes because Ecuador their biggest export is bananas, and so there's a lot of tropical fruit types of exports there. Now we take that and move that over into Brazil. I'm trying to figure out the map. So on my right would be Brazil. Yes, Brazil, I believe, is in the northern right-hand area of South America. But Brazil tends to lean more towards your black fruit type notes. So you're going to get a lot of black currant. You're going to get a lot of blackberry, a lot of black cherries, a lot of raisin type notes in there from Brazil. Whether it's the apricot, which I'll never be able to pronounce that name correctly, or the Matafina. And depending upon which one, and those are two of the wrappers that are really distinguished, used in Brazil. Now, we come over to the Dominican Republic and Cuba, and because of the terroir there, we tend to get, and because of their history, we tend to get more earthy, grassy, hay, alfalfa, greenery type notes in those regions. I hope all of that makes sense, but what I'm trying to do is to, by knowing what predominant notes or what are common notes that you're going to get out of a particular region, then knowing that a brand, such as Karen Berger, such as Arturo Fuente, and where they grow their tobacco and where they get their tobacco, and what regions those tobaccos come from is going to tell you some types of notes that you can typically get from it. So back to what we were saying earlier, with the graham cracker type notes that Karen is typically known for, and she absolutely is. It's because she almost always includes some type of Dominican tobacco in her cigar. And here I've talked so much that my cigar is out again. And so, with all of that, I'm not going to be able to get through this full pairing. But, we titled this Back to the Basics. And, we talked about some of the things that we've talked about on the show numerous times as far as with the cigars and with pairings and with tasting notes and such like this, and went through a full pairing here. Let me know if you guys have any any final questions. Otherwise, I'm uh, going to wrap this up before my laptop actually dies on me. Probably not going to kill this bottle tonight, but I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Let us know in the comments if you want to see more, walkthrough pairings, such as we're doing on this. Red and I are doing the full pairings with the food. She should be back next week, which in that case we're going to be doing unfinished business by Rojas with chicken fajitas and Tito's vodka. When I'm doing solo ones, which I'm also am willing to come on, some night, and just do a walkthrough pairing with people, outside of the regular twisted pair on this. Hope you enjoyed a little bit of history behind Fused Spirits. For me, personally, history has a lot to do with with the story, why people do what they do within regards to the cigars, spirits, and wines, and kind of, helps you relate a little bit to it, a little bit more. So with all of that, hope you guys have enjoyed this. Please, if you haven't gone out and subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so. Help us out by subscribing to our YouTube channel. This is our YouTube channel. If you don't follow Fused Spirits, go out and check them out. This is their website, fusedspirits.com. You can find them on Facebook. Just search for Fused Spirits. Imagine that. And you can also find them on Instagram. And also, as you know, love Karen Berger. Here's where she is on Instagram. And then here is her website. Where you can go out and find her cigars. So with all of that, appreciate you guys. And until next week, explore the pairings because there's something for everyone.